This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hello, 313. Hello, Michigan. And once again, if you're listening outside of the state of Michigan, I wish you a warm welcome. I thank you for listening to this podcast. This is episode number 16. Number 16. The name of this show is Travel Basketball with Gus Weaver. I'm your host, and this has been a whirlwind of fun for me. This is a show only heard on Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I'm very thankful and gracious for the platform that they've allowed me to have to talk travel basketball. This is an original formatted show. It's something that hasn't been done here in the state of Michigan. And what it is, it's a podcast strictly dedicated to travel basketball. Most of the teams that we cover are from right here in Michigan. However, we do venture beyond the state lines. And we discuss other teams. We discuss other tournaments. I've had guests on this show from all over the country. Tennessee, Georgia, right here in Michigan, Ohio. My guests come from all over. They're very happy to do these interviews to provide the listeners with a little bit of insight in terms of the AAU / travel basketball community. Some of the ins and outs, some of the daily things that the coaches go through, the dedication from parents is something that we always like to talk about because without the parents, obviously it would be a lot more difficult for these kids and also for the teams to travel from state to state, county to county, compete in tournaments. And that's what it's all about in terms of this show. It's youth basketball, it's travel basketball, it's AAU, high talent, established players, established teams. Also with the brand new teams, brand new players that have jumped on the scene. All of these guys deserve to get a shout out because there's a lot of hard work, dedication, and commitment that goes into travel basketball. Who I am, once again, my name is Gus Weaver. Currently, I'm the director for the 313 Hot Boys travel basketball team. We have two teams right now, class of 2024, class of 2025. And like I said, why I do this show is to give exposure. There's nothing better from a parental standpoint, as to hear people talking about your kid. From a coach's standpoint, there's nothing better than to hear people talking about your program. If you're a kid, there's nothing better than hearing people talk about you on a podcast show. I know when I was coming up, not only were there not any podcasts, but nobody was talking about me on radio or TV or, hardly ever in the newspaper. So it's a feel-good podcast, and what we've been delivering is good feelings so far. Something that I like to do is organically grow things, such as my basketball team. Same principles apply right here to this podcast. We are slowly but surely growing this listener base, growing a fan base. At this juncture, we have people lined up to do interviews on this very podcast, and I'm just trying to get them in the best I can. And I like to mix up these interviews. I'm looking forward to having a couple of basketball moms on this show to do an interview, to give you guys a little bit of insight on, what the moms go through. Because a lot of time you'll see the dads, they're coaching, they're hands-on. So what are the moms up to? Very soon in the near future, I'll have a couple of moms. Maybe we'll do a round table type of discussion just to pick their brain a little bit, to see what the moms go through. Because it's not easy for them as well. They have to, be dedicated. Look, travel basketball is not for the weak. Some kids, some families, they play rec league, nothing wrong with that. You play football, nothing wrong with that. But travel basketball is a different animal, especially if you're really traveling. Some teams call themselves travel programs, but they don't really hit the road. My Hot Boys, we hit the road, along with plenty of other teams right here in Michigan. We hit the road. The reason for hitting the road is to develop relationships amongst parents, develop camaraderie amongst players, and it is a chance to bond from coach to parent aspect. It's a good chance to sit down and talk with the coach off the court. I think that's very big, to go have a meal with. When we travel, we like to have team dinners. So, we'll take one of those nights and go and have a team dinner, and it's everybody. It's all the players, it's the coaches, it's the parents. It's a pretty good time. And, hopefully this relationship building experience, because a lot of time that's what it boils down to. You meeting people, developing new relationships, and that's big. That is very big. So once again, I welcome you to episode 16. Something that I like to do is I like to talk about a tournament from last weekend. I like to preview a tournament coming up this weekend. Just so happened right now, the latter stages of August, getting into September, leading up to Labor Day, it is a very slow period for travel/AAU basketball. So, we talked about some tournaments last week. I will not preview a tournament that's coming up this weekend. I do have a very special guest lined up for you guys, another chance to get a little insight from another program that we have mentioned on this show. I'm very excited about my interview coming up on this show. I'm also very excited about the fall leagues coming up. I talked last week about the Michigan Playmakers Fall League, one of the premier basketball leagues right around time school is starting here in the state of Michigan. You can almost say nobody does it better than the Michigan Playmakers. They've been around for a very long time. Wendell Green does a very good job as director of that program. He's hosting tournaments year-round, along with putting top quality talent on the floor from his Michigan Playmakers team. So that's something that I'm very excited about. I'm also excited about the Fall League that will be starting right after Labor Day in Saline, Michigan. This will be a middle school league. If you guys have a team, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, even if it's a 5th grade and you want these guys to play up, I would highly recommend the Saline League, no matter the stature of your basketball program. And you guys might hear me say that a lot. No matter the stature of your basketball program, there's only one way to get better, and that's by playing against better competition. So if you're a brand new program and you're starting out, there's nothing wrong with jumping in the Michigan Playmakers League. There's nothing wrong with jumping in this Saline Fall League. Take your lumps and come back the next season with a little bit experience under your belt, a different outlook. You'll know what it takes to be successful in these fall leagues. And, my Hot Boys have followed that protocol. Last year, being a brand new team on the scene, we jumped in the Playmakers League and we took lumps. We probably finished right at about 500. But this year coming up, I don't expect us to lose much because now we have that experience under our belt. So that's what these fall leagues can do, whether you're an established program or a brand new program on the scene. My advice, coming from a director standpoint, my advice would be, don't wait. Don't wait. You got a team, throw them right into the fire. Let them learn on the job. And, that mixed with a good quality practice, once, twice, 3 times a week, before you know it, your team will be right where you want them to be. And guys, I can honestly say that I am very excited, not only for NFL starting, because NFL, if you turn on the news right now, they're kind of stealing most of the sporting news, so to speak, but it's football season in general. It's not just NFL. It's college football starting. I'm excited about that. It's high school football starting. I'm excited about that. And for years, I've been excited about Little League football starting. So I do have my eye on a few teams that I'll be checking out this year in terms of the high school level. And, football is king. We sit here and talk basketball, once a week on this podcast. But, here in America, football still remains king of all of the 4 major sports. So, this is a basketball show. is strictly dedicated to travel basketball. Every now and again, we may touch on some football subjects because football is king. As I mentioned, I was very excited, and I am very excited about this week's interview. If you guys are familiar with travel basketball here in the state of Michigan, you must be familiar with the Michigan Majors. Today, I will interview Jaret Thomas, the director for the Michigan Majors, and we'll get a little insight on their program. He'll have a chance to be braggadocious about some of his players, and he'll give you a little bit of history in terms of the Michigan Majors. As promised, very excited to interview Mr. Jaret Thomas, director of the Michigan Majors. This is a team that my Hot Boys have personal experience playing against. A very good program, very well coached. Mr. Jaret Thomas, thank you for being my interview this week. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me. Definitely a big fan of what you're doing. I heard your show basically for the first time a couple weeks ago, and I can say that anytime you can put Michigan teams and our guys in a positive light, it was just a lot of fun to listen to. So thank you for what you're doing.
Well, thank you for listening. One of the reasons that I wanted to do this podcast strictly dedicated to travel basketball here in the state of Michigan is because as most parents, I get tired of hearing that youth basketball in the state of Michigan is dead. I saw something on Twitter today saying that the state of Michigan now, in terms of basketball, has just become a farm system for other states,
Steve Bell tweeted that. Yep,
yes,
I saw that.
Yes, and as much as I hate it, it's true to a certain degree because I see a lot of these high school juniors and seniors going to prep schools outside of the state of Michigan. Like I said, this podcast is to show. This is proof that Michigan basketball, it is not dead, it's thriving, and judging from some of the people I've interviewed, some of the tournaments that I've seen, including your team, there's tons of talent right here in the great state of Michigan. You being the director of the Michigan Majors, can you give our listeners a little bit of insight in terms of, how you got started in that role and a little bit of Michigan Majors history?
Absolutely. I'll put it this way. The Michigan Majors, it really wasn't anything I wanted to do. I'm a high school basketball coach. I've been coaching the last 8 years, and a couple years back, 2 years ago is when it all started. I had two parents, Annette Semensky and Jesse Patterson. Their kids played at Oakland Christian, and they were just looking for, them to play AAU. I don't know if you remember team basketball, but team basketball had kind of dissolved, and I had a group of 8th graders at the time, and they were like, these boys need a coach. I said I didn't want to do it. I really was blind to AAU. I didn't have really any idea what it was all about. All I knew was the bad things about it. And, once I gave it a shot, we got in there. It opened my eyes to what's really going on at the youth and development levels. And it's just been a race ever since then. So thanks to those two parents who really kind of pushed me into it, it's almost like an obsession at this point. So
yeah, I get that. Kind of the same here. This is something that I never intended on doing. I was content, man, with my child, playing for an AAU team, but never did I imagine starting my own squad. And here I am. And like you said, it does turn into an obsession. I guess it's just the competitive nature. But
it is. When we first started, I have to tell you, me being a high school coach, I'm used to practicing 5-6 days a week, having scouting reports, having all this information going into a game. AAU was completely different. I needed to adjust. I needed to get better. So selfishly, this has been something that's made me a better coach. It's really shown me a lot about the talent that's in this area and what's coming up. And, we want to prove, because when we start out, I know how it is when you start out a couple years back, it was very difficult. We were a long ways away from what our teams look like today. And I can say that the growth we've experienced is, before I say anything about the majors, my family is instrumental. My parents, my family, my wife, the support and friends, and the support I have to do this is amazing. And then combine that with great parents and great players really in the communities that we work in, Rochester, Auburn Hills, Pontiac, West Bloomfield, Lakehorn, that Oakland County area. It's just a strong group of families out there, and that's really what has allowed us to move forward.
So the Michigan Majors Club, is that based out of Oakland County, or like where exactly?
Yeah, we practice out of Auburn Hills. So we've worked out of Oakland Christian primarily, where I was coaching at the time when it started, and then we've worked out of OCC, Auburn Hills. Those are really our two main spots. Gotcha.
Now, you mentioned getting started, like how difficult it was. I know that firsthand because, when the Hot Boys got started, we almost had to beg players to even come to a tryout, like let alone play for us. Just come to a tryout because nobody had ever heard of us. And, the parents with those kids that are special, they tend to shy away from a brand new program.
Of course.
Which makes it that much more difficult. Now, how long ago did you start the majors?
So we started about 2 years ago. So this is our second full year of operation. And I can say that acquiring players and teams, the advertising, it's not going to cut it if nobody knows who you are and you're new. What I learned pretty quick is that you have to run great practices and great training sessions. So I partnered with the guy, Christian Roberson, with Empire Basketball. He's an amazing trainer in the area. I partnered with him and we said, look, we're going to do this right. So if we have 8 kids or we have one team or whatever we have, we are going to give them everything to where they can't help but go and talk about us. And that's really how it worked. So now when I get a team, it's not because of anything I posted anywhere. I don't do any advertising really. And my social media was honestly really non-existent until this past 6 months. So it's all word of mouth. We want to run the best practices and training, period. And once we did that, it was like a wildfire. People would come to our practice and our training, and they would say, we've not had anything like that. And to me, that's really what it's all about. Because at the end of the day, you're going to win some games, you're going to lose some. But if your practices and your training sessions are top-notch, then you're going to acquire better players, and you're going to retain the ones that you have.
No doubt. I 100% agree with that. In terms of the word of mouth advertising, our social media has been alive and well since we started, and we started in June of last year. So we're kind of on the same level in terms of this being our second, complete year. But no matter what I advertise on social media, the word of mouth works better than anything, and it always has throughout the history of trying to sell anything, whether it be a product, a program, or whatever. Word of mouth is something that's it is very important, man, because you have kids talking to other kids, you have parents talking to other parents, and like you said, in terms of a good quality practice, the parents and players that we invite to work out with us for the very first time, they leave, and I hear the same thing about my child has never been through anything like this in terms of, skills enhancement, working with guys that know what they're doing. And it makes a ton of difference. I see a lot of time, guys are in the gym working out, but it's like, how good is your workout? Because I don't like to say that's wasted time, but if you're in there, BSing and clowning around, that's kind of wasted time.
Yeah, it really starts from the time you step into the gym. I think at first they see how everything is done timely. Everything is done. Every practice is planned out well ahead of time to the minute. And, I talk a lot with the guys who help me coach. My brother, Jaret Thomas, one of my good friends, James Prince, a guy named Robert White, amazing guy, helped us out. We're not going to get bigger than what we can support. So all the guys I have, I trust them. I know they know how to run a practice, and we collaborate on it. But after you run the practice and training, I will say that a big part of acquiring and retaining the players you have is going out there and competing and getting some wins under your belt. The first year, it was horrible. I mean, we would join. We would go out there, and it was really tough. And as a director, no matter how well you're doing things or how above board, if you're not competing, you're going to feel it in every direction. So to see the reward of that and to see our guys competing and to winning quite a few tournaments, that's that to me that speaks loudly as well outside of your training. So
Yeah, no doubt, man. I try to keep my eyes on, these tournaments here in Michigan. And recently, I know you guys won a tournament. This was maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, correct? Your sixth grade unit?
Yeah, those guys, those 2024 guys are something else. I'll tell you that. And I never thought I would coach kids that young. I've been coaching varsity basketball for this will be my 8th year, and I never realized how much, I guess you could say, I'll say fun, but then I'll also say how much they can absorb and how much they're really capable of at that age. And they just impressed me, and really it's been one of the most fun teams I've coached. So
that's pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I like to see the adults getting enjoyment out of it rather than constantly screaming and yelling. It's good to see adults having fun. Just as much fun as the kids are having. I think that's big too because I can't tell you how many parents I talk to that have called me. Expressing a little bit of interest in the Hot Boys, and one of the main things that they say is they don't want their kid to be coached by a coach who's constantly cussing and yelling and screaming. Like, that doesn't work. And for me personally, like image does matter. I'm sure it matters to you guys, and we just try to keep it all positive. Tell me something, man. Seeing how you're a high school coach for so long, and I know you said it's different than coaching AAU. Tell me, is one of the differences, like you said, when you're coaching high school, you're doing a lot of game planning for your next game. You get a ton of practice time. AAU, not so much, and it's more so developmental. Am I correct on that?
I would have to agree with that in parts. I would say that it's made me a better coach because everything we do from an AAU perspective is very fluid. Meaning, if we're going to run an offense, our offense is very fluid, saying, all right, if they're playing or defending us this way, we have these adjustments and understanding kind of built in. And on the other side, your defense, your transition, your out of bounds play, everything has to be very fluid and easy. You can adapt and change it on the spot because we all know that we don't have a lot of practice time. You cannot prepare for everything you're going to see. You need to make sure that your terminology, your calls, everything that you're doing and preparing is organized ahead of time, to where when you're teaching these kids in practice, the short time you get, you're giving them just enough so when you get to that tournament, you can make all the adjustments you need to make. And whereas in high school, we can practice things for 20 minutes, we can practice things for 30 minutes. We have 2 or 3 days to prepare for one team.
Yeah.
In AAU, you got about 1 hour to prepare for maybe 5 or 6 teams that you see that you've never even heard of before.
Yeah,
so that's a big difference. Yeah,
that's a big thing, man. Anytime the tournaments come out, the schedule comes out, I immediately go on social media and see what kind of info can I get on these teams we're balling against.
Everything, yeah.
Because like you
I'm
said,
right with you.
It's teams you never heard of, and you never know what personnel is coming, even with teams that you've played numerous times. They can show up with a whole nother team.
Yep, we're seeing plenty of that, So, high school is a great game. I really think that high school and AAU should continue to collaborate and collaborate even more. I think your high school coach should know your AAU coach. Your AAU coach should know your high school coach, and these guys should be on the same plane. Too often you see them combating each other or really too insecure to talk to each other. And I don't understand that. Unless you think one of them is trying to sabotage what you're doing, you're going to be a lot more effective saying, all right, this is the player we're looking at, this is what this player needs. And most of the time, that can be a really positive situation. So.
Yeah, I would like to see a little bit more of that as well because too much the high school coaches and the AAU coaches are butting heads instead of working together, sharing information amongst each other. It's too competitive. And like you said, I think, just my opinion, it does come down to the insecurity issue. Too often a guy is not really willing to talk to another guy, not even to just get advice, but just talk about what's going on.
Exactly. If you're working with my kid, I want to know who you are. I want to know what type of guy you are. I want to understand, how do you coach him? And it can be different. But at the end of the day, I think that's important to have those relationships. And me seeing both sides of it, oh my goodness, AAU can be an amazing thing to complement a high school player's development. So
I agree with that, man.
yeah.
Now, the first time I saw your squad, I believe, was at the Moneyball tournament. You guys were at the Moneyball tournament, correct, this past year?
Not this past. I don't think we were there this past year. We might have been there the year before. We were out there.
I think that's the first time I saw your team was at the Moneyball tournament, and they were impressive to me. And ever since I laid eyes on them the first time, every time I'm looking at a tournament that you guys are in, you're either finishing first or second. So, kudos to you guys, because when we get in a tournament, our goal is always to make it to the championship game. And, from that point, anything can happen. But for you guys to do it consistently says a lot about your coaching, your parents, your players, and all that. So, I commend you for that.
Well, I appreciate that. And I can tell you that, we do, you hit the nail on the head. The parents and players, that's really what has allowed those groups to turn the corner. We have a really good 2021 class, and we have a really good 2024 class. And then we have, some really special players in our 2023 and 2022. But really, those two teams, 21 and 24, they have been ultra competitive wherever they go.
Yeah, I can vouch for that, man. Your 24 team is hard-nosed, well-coached, good perimeter players, major size. And, the size factor alone is something that every basketball team in the state wants.
Yeah, it just makes me laugh, though. 2024, just to say 2024 is funny. The thing about them is I always look for skill. Like, we have guys that are tall, but in our practice and training, they're handling the ball. We're trying to expand their range because, they might be tall right now, but you just don't know how they're going to turn out. And we've taken that approach with anyone who might be tall like that when they're young. So I laugh. We're tall now, but now we're going to 13U, and we might not be tall anymore. So we'll see.
That's right, and that's something that we do at our practices as well. Our bigs get the guard training. Not only for the next season as you move up in age or a grade, but long term. You never know when these kids are going to stop growing. So, you may have a big right now, but he can stop growing at 6'2", and then he needs guard skills.
You see it all the time. You see it all the time, and it's just funny. The first year we started operating, I would only play man-to-man defense. Mm-hmm. Now, this is something that is very controversial. You see people all the time. If you're not playing man-to-man, you're not teaching the kids. Well, I'll argue with you. If you're not competing, you're not teaching the kids. So you'll see us use our bigs and play some zones and different stuff to compete. But you better believe in practice and in game situations, they are learning man. But I think you have to complement that with keeping your kids in the game and teaching them the importance of having that competitive spirit. Because playing strictly man-to-man in the environments we see is just not going to be suitable. So it's finding a balance and teaching your kids, what it means to compete.
I agree with that, man. Some of the bigger camps that we've sent kids to, some of them, they tell you flat out, we're playing man-to-man defense. There is no zone. So this will shore up your man-to-man. And
I love that.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. Because a lot of times,
it's fair. If you're going to do it, I'll do it. Absolutely.
Yep. A lot of times in youth basketball, man, you see every team just drop into a 2-3 and they're content with that. And that's fine. Whatever. Everybody runs their program their own way. But what are you teaching your kid in terms of defense? Like, can he stop somebody when we need a stop? So. I'm all for that man-to-man training, game situation. I love it. You guys have a tryout coming up soon, correct?
Yes, sir. We try out September 4th and September 5th. That's a Tuesday and Wednesday at Oakland Christian. You can see that on our Twitter. You can see that on our website. We'll be opening that up to anybody and everybody. That's
a good thing as well, man. Jaret, are you guys getting into any fall leagues?
Yes, we'll be playing in the Warrior Playmaker Fall League. We're looking for some redemption. Last year, being our first year, we really struggled in that league. And I will tell you right now, the kids we have coming back, they're going to hear about it. And I really am excited to see how they respond, because I know that league is always really good. And I appreciate what Coach Rocky and Coach Wendell do every year. Those are just two amazing programs. So.
Yeah, Rocky and Wendell really got it going on with this fall league. They really bring in the top teams in the state. And, you know, Jaret, me and you have a lot in common because we jumped into that league last year, being a brand new program. We were probably about 3 months old, and we took hits, man.
Oh, man. Yeah.
It was tough
I
because
used to drive home wondering, am I sure I'm in the right place?
Yeah.
You know, it was really tough. But when we started the majors, I told my parents, I said, look, some of our kids are from the suburbs, some of them might not be ready, but if we're going to do this, we're going to show you where the bar is at. You may not be there yet, but I would rather show you the bar so you can feel it and experience it, and then we'll chase it. And I can tell you the way those kids have responded, oh man, they are chasing it, and sometimes they're setting it. So I'm just enjoying that.
Yeah, I get it, man. We agree on so much. It's kind of funny. But, you know, same deal here. Like, take your lumps. I don't expect us, in terms of 2024, to lose much this year in that Playmakers League. I certainly hope not. You know,
hey, your team has some guys. I don't know their names, but you have some guys. And you had a fourth grader playing with the older guys in that King of the Crown tournament. And I told him he was the toughest kid in the gym. The way he can defend the ball, and then he knocked down some shots. You have some guys to really be excited about. I'll tell you that.
Oh man, well thank you. It's nice to be noticed. It's nice really to talk basketball. You know, me and you being a director, me being a director, kind of similar paths. Got started right around the same time. So this is a good conversation, man. I'm really enjoying this. I know you just left a high school football game, Avondale, correct?
Yep. Yes, sir. Yep, Avondale was out at Troy High School tonight. I'm still sitting out here in the parking lot.
Very nice. You know, in my intro today, you know, I mentioned how excited I am. And I know this is a basketball podcast, but how excited I am about football season. And it's not just the NFL. It's not college, but it's the high school. You know, it's the little leagues. I got so many kids, you know, that I'm affiliated with, so to speak. I'm just excited to watch some football, man.
Oh, my goodness. Standing on the sidelines and watching those guys compete, it was amazing. Now, Avondale did get the win tonight. They won. I think when I last checked, it was about 30, maybe 28-10 when I checked, so they were pulling away in the fourth. But football is such an emotional game, and to see those guys out there getting excited and you know, stripping the ball, getting interceptions, breaking loose for touchdowns, man, football is back. I cannot wait for this fall.
Hey, I still say, and I always have said, football is king here in the United States of America. It doesn't matter if you're a basketball coach or baseball coach.
Yeah.
I really think football is what drives sports, like here in America. Hey, Jaret, before I let you go, I must say, I learned a lot personally just from talking to you for these 15, 20 minutes, whatever it's been. You know, in terms of you telling me about you guys' practices and how everything is timed out. And we try to do the same thing here with the Hot Boys organization. But it's really been a pleasure talking to you. And maybe one day in the future, we could line up an inter-squad scrimmage between the Hot Boys and the Michigan Majors. That would be great.
Man, done deal. You know, I went back and listened to a number of your shows here, and you've had some great people on. I was just listening to Jordan Ebbs from ABBA talking the other day when I was working on. I can tell you that what you're doing here, sharing information, giving us a platform and a place to recap our kids' performances, this is huge. So thank you for what you're doing. Oh, man.
It's my pleasure, really, because I get a lot of enjoyment out of this and talking to people, you know, meeting people. It's funny how our Hot Boys went to Tennessee for nationals, and when I walked in the gym, there was about 2 or 3 directors there waiting on me. They wanted to be my guests for the podcast, wanted to know if I was recording live from Tennessee, and it was just crazy, man, because these people are from all over the country. That's when I interviewed Calvin Nash, who's the director of the Atlanta Nets.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it just so happened, man, I interviewed him right after our team played his team. And you can imagine at Nationals, it was hostile. You know, we came out with the win, but it was tough, man. And then for me and him to have to sit down in the same room for an interview, it was really like, let's put basketball aside and talk about basketball. You know what I mean?
Yeah, humility is something very, very early on in coaching, and as long as your team is competing and as long as your team is competing the right way, two coaches should be able to come together afterward.
Oh, no doubt. Yep, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Give our listeners any social media connects where they can follow the Michigan Majors.
Yeah.
See what you guys got going on.
Yeah, Twitter is our thing right now. It's at MajorsBall. We do some little practice clips sometimes. We try to share good resources for parents and players. And then we have our website, MichiganMajors.org. Check out our website, learn a little bit more about us, and that's really our social media plug.
That's good stuff. Jaret, I really appreciate you coming on with me. And like I said, man, I have your contact info. You have mine. Maybe we can set up something going down the line when we get a little slow period or something.
Done deal. Anytime. My guys are always looking for good competition. And you talked about going to nationals and all these different places across the country. And, at some point, we may do that, especially with our older group. But I can tell you, just going to Detroit, Saginaw, Flint, Lansing, I found everything we needed right here. So thank you for having such a strong and tough program to where we don't even have to travel very far to get quality. So
yeah, hey, that's a good point because you really got your hands full right here in the state of Michigan, man.
I don't need to go anywhere. I don't need to stay in any hotels. I don't need to spend any more money than needed. These kids are getting it all they can handle, and they're getting better, and I love that.
That's good stuff. It's all about improvement at the end of the day, and the kids having fun. That's what I tell my parents all the time when they have questions about camps that we're going to or tournaments. My main thing is tell your kid to have fun. Get some shots up, have fun. Everything else will take care of itself.
Yes, yep.
Jaret, thanks again, man. I will talk to you soon. Appreciate you.
Hey, thank you. Keep up the good work. Appreciate you.
Thanks again, man. Once again, that was Jaret Thomas, director of the Michigan Majors, a very solid program out of Oakland County. Like I said, my hot boys have personal experience playing against these guys. They are no pushover, and like I said, bona fide talent, backcourt, size, and obviously if you just listen to that interview, they're doing things the right way. They're building the right way. They're running practices the right way, and it seems like they have all their ducks in a row. They have no choice but to be successful. Thanks again to Jaret Thomas, director from the Michigan Majors. And that will bring us to the shout-out portion of this show. And, I always tell you guys this is one of my favorite parts of the show because I do ask you guys for feedback. The listeners, the people that follow me on social media, I ask you, give me anything that you got going on in terms of if you're on a winning streak, if you got a brand new coach, if you got tryouts, like Jaret just mentioned, their tryouts coming up next month, anything, give it to me, and they will be mentioned on this portion of the show. So let's get right into it. First shout out goes to Middle School Hoops TV Camp. It will be held in Indiana next month. The 313 Hot Boys are sending 5 players to this camp. It's a big time camp, big time exposure. Scouts, media will be there. So Middle School Hoops TV, follow those guys on Instagram. This is your shout out. Next shout out goes to the Gus Macker Otsego coming up this weekend. Once again, the 313 Hot Boys are sending a team of 5th, 6th graders out to compete. We are searching for our 6th Golden Gus Trophy this weekend. So far, we've competed in 6 Gus Mackers this summer. We've won 5 of them. We just took our first loss last week. Looking to get back on the winning side of Gus Macker this weekend coming up. Next shout out goes to Freddie Bishop, a local product who was playing with the New York Jets last year as a pass rush linebacker. This year, he's playing with your very own Detroit Lions. I'm really looking forward to seeing how Freddie Bishop, not only his performance, but just the aura around him of being able to perform in front of your family, being able to perform in front of your friends. It must be a dream come true for his parents and for himself. So Freddie Bishop, Detroit Lions, that's your shout out. Next shout out goes to the Robichaud Bulldogs football team opening up tomorrow night against Redford Union at Robichaud. It's a 7 p.m. start. This is a team that my oldest son is playing on. He's playing linebacker. He's playing running back. Hey, you guys come out, support the Robichaud Bulldogs against Redford Union in their season opener tomorrow night. Next shout out obviously goes to Avondale High School for a big win in football tonight. I would not have known that if it weren't for Jaret telling me. So Jaret, once again, thank you for something different, and big shout out to Avondale High School. A big win to open their season, and we're obviously giving a shout out to the Michigan Majors, big time program out of Oakland County. Keep your eyes open for these guys. If you don't know who they are, you will know who they are, because like I said, they're a tough squad, and I don't care who they play against. There is no ugly losses coming from the Michigan Majors. These guys are hard-nosed, highly competitive, well-coached, very athletic. They have size. They have backcourt. Shout out, Michigan Majors. Guys, thank you for listening. Once again, I get a lot of enjoyment out of this. Thank you to Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Please follow me on Twitter at 313LifeBrand. You just listened to episode 16 of Travel Basketball with Gus Weaver.